He wasn't stabbed. He wasn't hanged. He wasn't even beheaded. King Henry VIII ordered him to be boiled alive, slowly, in front of a crowd. And here's the darkest part. There was no such law at the time. The king made one just to make it happen. This is the terrifying true story of the chef who was turned into a warning, and the monarch who rewrote the rules of justice in boiling blood. If you crave royal stories history tried to bury, don't forget to hit subscribe to In 1531. Richard Roose was just a cook, not a noble, not a warrior, just a man who prepared meals for the household of John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester. He had no political power, no enemies at court, but he worked in a place that mattered, a home connected to church, crown, and politics. In Tudor England, even a kitchen could become a battlefield, and Roose, whether guilty or not, was about to become the most gruesome example of royal justice gone mad. It started with a simple meal. Roose allegedly prepared a pot of porridge for Bishop Fisher's household. But soon after eating, 2 people fell violently ill and died. Others in the home were also sickened. Panic spread. Poison was suspected. The bishop himself had skipped the meal that day, surviving by chance. Immediately, all eyes turned to the cook. Roose was arrested, dragged before authorities, and accused of deliberate poisoning. But there was a problem. No law existed that allowed execution by boiling. At least, not yet. When King Henry VIII heard of the poisonings, he was enraged. But this wasn't just about justice. It was about fear and control. In a time when religion and politics were dangerously tangled, a poisoning inside a bishop's home felt like treason. Henry didn't want a quiet trial. He wanted a message. Something unforgettable. Something terrifying. So instead of following the law, he created a new one. Within days, Parliament passed the Boiling Act of 1531, allowing people convicted of poisoning to be boiled alive, starting with Roose, a punishment made for one man. Richard Roose was never given a fair trial. There was no jury, no defense, no investigation beyond the king's anger. He claimed the poisoning had been accidental, perhaps a mistake with herbs or medicines. But it didn't matter. The new law existed now, and it had only one name written on it, his. Within days of its creation, Roose was condemned. There would be no prison, no hanging, just a cauldron, a fire, and a crowd. He wasn't just being punished. He was being turned into a spectacle, a warning in human flesh. On April 5, 1531, Richard Roose was brought to Smithfield, a public place often used for executions. But this would be unlike anything Londoners had seen. A giant metal cauldron had been prepared, filled with boiling water or oil. Records differ, but the result was the same. The fire roared. Guards held the crowd back. Roose was chained, stripped, and lowered slowly into the liquid. Not dropped, lowered. The intention was not a quick death. It was agony stretched across minutes. And as he screamed, hundreds watched. Some in horror, others in silence. As the boiling liquid touched his skin, Richard Roose screamed in ways no one could forget. The crowd, packed shoulder to shoulder, stood frozen. Some wept, some turned away, but most just watched. His skin blistered, then peeled, then split. Eyewitnesses said he thrashed in the pot like a wild animal, trying to lift himself out, only to be pushed back down. The stench of boiling flesh filled the air. His suffering lasted more than 15 minutes. It wasn't execution. It was ritualized pain, and the king wanted every second of it known. The execution shocked even Henry VIII's supporters. Many whispered that the punishment was excessive, even grotesque. But the king stood firm. He declared that poisoners were worse than murderers. He said they attacked silently, without honor, and for that, they deserved a death beyond imagination. The Boiling Act wasn't just about Richard Roose. It was a tool for fear, a message to servants, cooks, and commoners. Even the lowliest hand could become a threat. And if you dared step out of line, your flesh might be the next to boil. After Roose's execution, London didn't erupt in applause. It fell into a strange, frightened quiet. People spoke about it only in hushed tones, especially kitchen workers, servants, and herbalists. If a king could change the law overnight and boil a man alive with no trial, what protection did anyone have? Some clergy began to question whether the act was even Christian. But no one challenged Henry directly. He was too powerful, too unpredictable. Roose's death didn't just punish one man. It shook the entire kingdom into obedience. Even within Henry's court, the memory of Roose's execution lingered. His closest advisors, like Thomas More, reportedly felt uneasy, though they never said it openly. The boiling death wasn't just brutal, it was personal. It revealed a king who could be sudden, violent, and theatrical. A ruler who didn't just punish, he crafted punishments. It became clear that Henry's justice was no longer bound by law. It bent to his emotions. The cauldron wasn't just for Roose. It was a mirror into the king's mind. Boiling, unpredictable, and merciless, Richard Roose left no writings, no last speech, no legacy. He wasn't a nobleman or a traitor, just a cook accused of a fatal mistake. Some historians believe he may have been innocent or simply careless with herbs. Others suspect he was a scapegoat, an easy target in a moment of royal paranoia. What's certain is this: his death wasn't about justice. It was about fear, about control, about power making an example out of powerlessness. And once the screams faded, so did his name, until history began whispering it again. The Boiling Act of 1531 didn't die with Richard Roose. It remained on the books and used, but lurking, for over a century. It was invoked again under Henry's son, Henry VIII, for a woman named Margaret Davy, who was also boiled for poisoning. But after that, the practice faded. The method was too brutal, too theatrical, even for an age used to cruelty. Eventually, Parliament repealed the law. But the fact that it ever existed, that a king once created a punishment more terrifying than any before, remained a stain on England's legal history. Richard Roose's boiling was one moment in a much larger pattern. Henry VIII wasn't just ruling. He was reshaping what monarchy meant. He broke from the Pope. He rewrote marriage laws. He executed queens. And with Roose, he proved he could create laws out of anger, fear, or impulse. No trial? No problem. No precedent. He'd invent one. The boiling pot wasn't just about poison. It was about domination. A message that in Henry's England, even the laws weren't safe from the king's hands. In time, Richard Roose faded from official records, but his story never fully disappeared. Among servants and kitchen hands, his name became a whisper of fear. Some believed the site of his execution was cursed. Others said his screams echoed through the alleys of Smithfield on cold nights. Whether folklore or guilt, Roose became more than a man. He became a symbol, not of justice, but of what happens when power goes unchecked. A forgotten cook turned into a royal warning. One mistake, one suspicion, and the pot could boil again. The Boiling Act is rarely mentioned in English history books. It's uncomfortable, disturbing, easy to overlook. But its existence matters, because it shows how far a crown could go when fear eclipsed reason. Henry VIII could have imprisoned Roose. He could have held a trial. Instead, he changed the law to make pain legal. And once that law existed, others would suffer under it too. It's a reminder that even in grand palaces and marble courts, cruelty can be written in ink and justified by silence. Richard Roose died screaming. But King Henry VIII lived on, rewriting history, reshaping kingdoms, remarrying, and destroying anything that defied him. Yet in that one moment, at that one cauldron, he showed the world something deeper. That absolute power doesn't just corrupt. It scalds. That a simple cook became fuel for a monarch's fury. That a new law was born in boiling flesh. And long after the steam rose and the crowd left, the question still lingers. What kind of king creates pain just to watch it happen?